Once again, good afternoon, everyone. We are here for the last session of this STTP, and for that we have with us Dr. Deepak Ranjan Nayak sir. Now, in this session, we are actually going to discuss about the. We are going to discuss about some introduction of medical imaging. So, I would like to invite Dr. Deepak Ranjan Nayak sir for the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And so good afternoon, one and all present over here. So welcome to the last session of this STTP, and this is a very interesting topic which I'm going to discuss right now, and which is nothing but a kind of application of pattern recognition as well as image processing. So in this particular session, what I'm going to focus in this 1.5 hour is we'll be talking about biomedical image processing, which is an advancement in this domain, in the domain of image processing, and where we will be talking about some of the recent medical imaging technologies or modalities currently being used by the doctors, radiologists to diagnose several diseases. And we'll be talking about the most important thing. Even yesterday also I gave an example about this computer aided diagnosis system and how it is related to pattern recognition, and that also I'll be talking about. And I will give you a direction and also introduction to deep learning, that what is the difference between these the common pattern recognition based systems and what are the major concerns in the pattern recognition system. And we'll be also talking about some of the recent architectures of deep neural network. I will not discuss in detail because it will take even 2 days or 1 week to finish all those things. So I will simply give you a brief introduction to deep learning and machine learning, and at last I'll be talking about some of the problems, very important challenges in this domain of medical imaging, including COVID-19, how medical imaging as well as pattern recognition will togetherly work towards fighting COVID-19. So that also will be discussing, including one, two other applications like brain disease classification using magnetic resonance imaging. And if time permits, then I will also be discussing something called as diabetic retinopathy, which is a kind of eye disease basically caused because of the diabetics. So that also will be discussing if time permits. And so let us start our discussion of this session with the definition. I mean, the formal and as well as the informal definition of medical imaging, because this session is dedicated to medical imaging. Let us start with the definition. So medical imaging, I hope you all have experienced with in your lifetime. Either you or your family members or maybe your friends and colleagues have experienced it. And let us discuss one by one. And also along with that, I will show you some of the example samples of each of these categories. So medical imaging is the definition. The medical imaging is the process of creating digital visual representation of the interior of a body. I hope you all know the importance of X-ray imaging. Whenever we're having any injuries, doctors always used to prescribe to go for X-ray imaging. And what is there inside the body is that if inside the body, and the X-ray machine is able to give a report where you can see that there is bone injury inside your body. So that's what the importance of every medical imaging technologies. And one of the most important thing in medical imaging is you can able to create a digital version. So you all know the importance of the digital image processing. So I mean the importance, once it is digital, it can be processed by means of a digital computer, and you can do anything. You can do prognosis, you can do any task using the digital computer. That means whatever the image is captured, once it is converted to the medical, I mean digital images, so then it can be processed by the digital computer, and whatever the task was done with simple image processing task, simple image processing, that can be also be done with medical image processing. So there are so several medical imaging modalities available, and here I have listed out some of the commonly used and very popularly known medical imaging technologies. If you can see here in the screen, I have listed out some of them. And the first one I have listed out is X-ray imaging. The second one is magnetic resonance imaging, otherwise called as MRI, electron microscopic imaging, ultrasound, CT scan, PET scan, positron emission tomography. I will now show you examples of each of these categories just to give you a feel that how it looks like, and after converting into image format. So if you look at here on the screen, I am now showing you 9 figures in 3 different rows. Each row contains three different images, and each row represents one imaging technologies. I mean sample images. So the first row, if you see, are nothing but, I think you all have experienced with, is nothing but some images of the X-ray films. So the first image of the first row is nothing but an X-ray image of a palm. Second one is X-ray image of a chest. Third one is X-ray image of a breast, and which is otherwise sometimes called as mammogram. And if you look at the images in the middle row are nothing but the MRI images. So MRI of the first one is MRI of a brain. The second one is also MRI of a brain, but in two different views. You can see the first one is the top view, and the second one is the side view, or you can call it as a sagittal view. And the third one is nothing but a fine MRI scan. Just I am showing you the varieties of different medical imaging technologies. And the last row, if you can see, different varieties of microscopic images basically used. These are all blood cells, you can see, and basically used for detecting the blood cancers like leukemia. And coming to the other categories, the ultrasound is also a very popular one. I hope you all have also seen this type of images earlier, ultrasound images, and then followed by some CT scan images is much more powerful than X-ray, and where you can see the brain of a, the brain in different number of slices and different uh, interval of time. And as well as if you look at the figure in the right hand side, is nothing but a PET image, which is sometimes very important to see the metabolic process happens inside the human body. So very important to just feel how medical images looks like, and how different it is from the natural images. And yeah, so the importance of biomedical imaging, we have already discussed medical imaging. The first, then the measure, I mean, the most important characteristics of these medical imaging technologies is thus it enables the doctors to see inside a patient. So what has happened to the patient inside the body, inside any, I mean, any organ inside the body? So they can easily see by using the some of the technologies, and doctors will prescribe that what kind of technology we should follow for what kind of diseases. So that is very important to know that what type of test or the medical imaging technology you should go for. That will be definitely be suggested or advised by the doctors or the medical personnel. And then earlier time, actually what was happened that at that time there were no medical imaging technologies. So the doctors has to go for operations. They have to cut some organs, and they have to see that what has exactly happened to the organ. Then according to that, and they went for operations and whatever the things they wanted to do. And I think that was so much risky. So let's say sometimes it happens, it may so happen that without any even, I mean, without any damage to any organ inside the body, some kinds of symptoms you may find. And for that, but these type of medical imaging technologies will help the doctors to see inside the body of the patient. And this is because when actually the biomedical imaging came into the picture, it can be processed. So it could be processed using digital computers, and the reason that is the reason why the researchers from various fields work together to solve or to come up with a very good solution. So the researchers from biology domain, the researchers from chemistry domain, the researchers from physics domain, the researchers from technology domain, the researchers from computer science, and domain, electrical domain, mechanical domain, electronics domain, all have been working together, and it's a called of multidisciplinary research work. So because we need the help of the doctors whenever you are going to develop something. So then what was coming to the definition of biomedical image processing. So what we are talking about is biomedical imaging, that means the technologies. So now if I would like to describe or define a biomedical image processing, then how would I define? Yeah, it's as simple as like digital image processing, the processing of biomedical images by computer to extract some relevant or meaningful information. And basically this process includes maybe visualization, maybe diagnosis, maybe prognosis, maybe classification or segmentation that we will be discussing later on. So it can assist because of this. So we can develop some automated system, and that can assist sorry that can assist the medical personnels to provide a second opinion or to take their reliable decision. So very very important. So then what is the actual limitations, what is the actual limitations of the manual detection process? So what doctors are doing, doctors are manually interpreting all the medical imaging or the images derived from the medical imaging technologies. So, but there are some problems whenever they are interpreting the images. There might be some cases. I mean, there may be some cases where you will find that difficulties. The doctors or the radiologists will find some difficulties. And basically, if I will summarize the whole thing, that manual detection process by interpreting the medical images are nothing but at a larger scale basically are tedious, time consuming, very expensive, and the last but not the least, it requires skilled supervision. It is very very important. It has to be, there has to be expert in this particular area, otherwise there will be abnormality in the image. The radiologist will say, no, 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 nothing is there, you can go and you are very safe right now. So what will happen, you know, that if you are having some disease and somebody will tell you you are very safe, and you know the consequences. So it always requires skilled supervision. If he or she is an expert, then only she can tell you the exact thing. But again, she or he cannot sit for 24 into 7 hours. So definitely there will be some, it is a job, it's a tedious job, time consuming job as well. So then what we exactly want here? Now we want, as an expert, as an AI expert, as an image processing expert, as an pattern recognition machine learning expert, it is our duty to design something. It is our duty to design or to develop some automated CAD system, computer-aided diagnosis system, with the help of machine learning and signal processing and image processing algorithm, so that, and that will be preferable for a fast, reliable, and accurate diagnosis. But one thing you have to remember here, that we are the people definitely who will design the CAD system, that's fine, but we cannot replace the doctors. So we cannot replace the doctors. We always need the help of the doctors. Here we don't want to replace the doctors, rather we want to assist the doctors to, to provide a fast, reliable, as well as accurate diagnosis of diseases. So this is one thing you have to remember. We should not say that we will replace the doctors. So we cannot do that. Very, very important to know about this, and to, it is to be very clear that what we are doing and what is our job and what is the job of the doctors. So doctors are them who will provide us the data and who will annotate the data, label the data, because they are the experts. And what we want to design a CAD system to assist them. This is what the conclusion of this particular slide is. And now coming to computer-aided diagnosis system. And if you see here, so what I'm going to discuss right now is computer-aided diagnosis system. So as I already mentioned, the moment it was possible to load the medical images into a digital computer, the researchers have started working or building the automated CAD systems. And the concept of CAD system and the development of CAD systems are also not new. It can be tracked back to 1960. And at that time, there were no deep learning, there were no machine learning. So that is why so researchers have applied some lower level image processing technologies to design CAD system. But the serious and systematic investigation started in the year 1990, maybe in the early 1990s. It has started because of the, you know, because of the availability of the data as well as the supervised learning techniques, and you all know that. So these supervised techniques, these machine learning and pattern recognition based techniques include the concept of feature extraction, what we already discussed yesterday, that always it requires some technologies or feature extraction technologies to derive some meaningful features or relevant features from the images, and then followed by the use of some statistical classifiers to finally come up with a solution. And yeah, so this in this slide you can see, this is yeah, the figure. It is a actually basic block diagram of a CAD system with and particularly machine learning based CAD system. And the stages are nothing but the first stage, if you can see on the screen here in this image, the first stage is image acquisition and pre-processing. Similar type of architecture also we have discussed yesterday. And today, yeah, we are discussing about the CAD system. And this CAD system is nothing but a machine learning based, or you can say the pattern recognition based CAD system. And if you can see here, the image acquisition and pre-processing is nothing but the first stage. And you know the task of the pre-processing, if your image is contaminated by noise, and if the images are of low contrast images, then you have to apply some pre-processing techniques, because you know if you directly apply some feature extraction technologies, and if that feature extraction technologies is not that robust towards noise, and then it would be difficult, and towards illumination as well, and it will be difficult for the feature extraction methods to extract the meaningful features if some noises are present in the images. So it is very, very important. If required, then you just apply some pre-processing techniques available in the literature, and to remove the unwanted information from the input images. And the second stage is nothing but ROI segmentation. It is not always required. Sometimes it is required if you are very much interested towards only some part of these images, medical images, not all the part of the images, some regions, basically the abnormalities where the abnormality is present. And for that, what you have to do is you have to apply some segmentation technique. And I will also tell you in my later slides that what is the segmentation problem and what is the classification problem, and how segmentation can also be used as a pre-processing technique, and sometimes segmentation can also be used as an independent problem. I will show you how segmentation is different from classification problem, and how it is different. I will definitely discuss in the later part of my discussion. And then after segmentation, the most vital stage, if you can see in this figure, is nothing but the feature extraction that we have already explained, that how important the feature is to decide or to make a decision. Then followed by feature reduction, which also we have talked about yesterday, that sometimes it is an optional stage, and sometimes it is you will find that the number of features are very high, and there are some features which are irrelevant, redundant. You have to remove those features. For that, you have to apply either feature reduction or selection techniques over here if requires. And the last one is also very, very important one, is nothing but the classification stage, where you will use some statistical classifiers, like we have discussed the naive Bayes classifiers. Similar to there are varieties of classifiers available in the literature. I will also show you one paper, and where you will where they have reported that there are 173 number of classifiers. That is very interesting. I will also discuss. Just for now, you remember that here the major concern in this type of system is the what type of feature, what type of feature you will extract from the images. Let's say you are solving right now brain image classification problem. So that means brain MRI image, and you want to classify here whether that person is a normal person, I mean, this person is having any brain disease or not. I mean, the image should be classified into two categories, normal and abnormal category. So then the question is, how do you know that what type of feature will go, I mean, is going to work for your model? Well, so it is pretty difficult if you are not that expert. So you cannot directly imagine and assume that this feature will going to work well for my problem. So this is but still, if you are expert and if you will go through the literature clearly, that this type of feature have got very good results on this data set, on this many number of images, maybe this maybe you will select a feature extraction method which is better than the feature extraction technique which are there in the literature. In that way, you can find or you can, you know, investigate that what feature extraction technologies is better for your work. And again, the question is what type of classifier you will consider for your work. There are a lot of classifiers available. So then, which classifier you will consider? And finally, what combination of feature extraction and classification will work together well? So this is what, but still you can apply this kind of pattern recognition techniques. And if you are a bit expert in this area, then you can, otherwise you can investigate more. You can go through some of the literature to see that what kind of features have already applied in this area and what I can apply. And if we can also see that there are some important feature extraction methods available in the literature, which are very good to very good in many of the applications and have been applied in many successful applications. That also can be applied over here. And these features, whatever you are extracting by yourself, as you are the one who is applying some technologies and extracting the features. So then, and these features are called as sometimes hand engineered features or handcrafted features. So the importance of CAD, computer aided system, we have already discussed, so no need to discuss further on it. Just to summarize it, it can help to improve the diagnostic accuracy, lighten the burden of increasing workload, and reduced cancer missed due to fatigue and overlooked or data overloaded, and it can also reduce inter and intra-reader variability. Very, very important, this one. And the importance of the CAD system, you all know that. So if we will discuss there are some of the weaknesses of machine learning based, machine learning or pattern recognition based models. And the major weaknesses are the selection of appropriate feature structure as well as classifier. And it always follows a multi-stage architecture. Multi-stage architecture, you can see here, multi-stage architecture. So important, very, very important to note it, and that what is the difference between this and this. And I will show you right now a very interesting article where they have mentioned that this particular article, if you can see, the title of the article is something interesting. Is this article is published in actually one of the top journal in the machine learning domain, the Journal of Machine Learning Research. Pretty difficult to publish a paper out here. And do we need hundreds of classifiers to solve a real world problem? So what they did is the researchers, what they did is they have reported, the paper was published in 2014, and they have reported that there are 179 classifiers exist in the literature till 2014, and they have divided all these classifiers into 17 families. Can you believe that there are 179 number of classifiers? They're divided into 17 groups based on the characteristics of the classifiers. Here you can see one is a discriminant analysis type, one is Bayesian type, I mean probability type, which we have discussed in the previous session. And there are some neural network based classifiers, support vector machine classifiers, decision tree based classifier, nearest neighbor based classifier, ensembling classifiers, varieties of classifiers they have reported. And what they did exactly is they have applied all the 179 classifiers over 121 data sets collected from UCI repository, which is available online. If you can Google it, UCI repository, if you have developed some algorithm and want to test whether your algorithm is working properly or not, what you can do is you can collect or you can download some of the data sets which are there in UCI repository, and you can test your model. So what they did, can you believe that 179 classifier they have tested their performance on 121 data sets. So what they concluded, so my conclusion here is to just to inform you, whenever you are designing something, whenever you are designing a pattern recognition or machine learning based model to solve a pattern recognition problem or to solve any image classification or image segmentation problem. So what basically image classification problem, because these are all classifiers. So what are the better classifiers they observed from these data sets is random forest, SVM with Gaussian and polynomial kernels, and extreme learning machine. Extreme learning machine, I hope some of you have heard about this name before. Extreme learning machine is nothing but a kind of neural network. It's a single layer feed forward neural network, and which is very fast. The learning is very fast, and it was reported that it is 10,000 times faster than the back propagation neural network, which you all know. So it's a very interesting architecture. Even we have been working with the extreme learning machine. We have also developed some of the architectures and some of the algorithms related to this. And so this is what my suggestion here is. Whenever you are applying or whenever you are going to solve some problems related to pattern recognition, better. I'm not saying these three will always give you better result. Don't test others. No, not like that. But just you should check with these three classifiers first, because it has been tested on several data sets, and they found that it is giving better result. Even the same we have tested, and we also found a similar kind of thing. But still, you can also choose something called as neural network as well in this three random forest, SVM, and extreme learning machine. Here also you can include BPNN architecture. So this is what my suggestion here from this paper is. And now if I will tell you that if somebody doesn't aware about this paper and doesn't aware about these classifiers, so then how they will select the features and classifiers. So it will be difficult for them to select a classifier and to select a feature, and randomly you can pick up and randomly, and that may lead to good performance, that may not. So it all depends upon your expertise in this particular area. I would like to right now show you that one model, one pattern recognition based model, which we have applied a few days ago to solve a problem related to medical image, brain image classification problem. And just a minute. I would like to, yeah. I hope my screen is visible. So this is the paper which I published in 2019 in IEEE transaction. So I would like to show you that what type of pattern recognition method we have adapted for solving a multi-class. I will be discussing on it, what is the multi-class brain disease classification problem. And you just see here, the feature extraction step we have followed here is we have applied something called as a curvilight transform, which is a kind of image transform. You know that. I mean, it is a somewhat is an extended version. It's better than wavelet and some variants of wavelet because it extracts features in different angles, and that is the benefit, or you can say the advantages of curvilight transform over other transform. If you want to know more about it, then you can read it. And just to show you that how we have designed the model. And if you, now you can see the model contains only a feature extraction stage as well as the classification stage, and in between there is something called as feature normalization, so which we found is required particularly for this case. And if you can see the feature extraction followed by classification using kernel ELM, that extreme learning machine, and this is nothing but a kernel version. very pretty similar to support vector machine. And then finally, we are classifying the images into 5 different categories. So I would like to show you something, how pattern recognition systems look like. And this is how actually the transform of an image looks like. And if you can see, this you can see the images. I mean the images in the frequency domain, we call it as subbands. Here, different angles and different scale. So this is what the benefit of curvature transform is. You can get the images in the frequency domain at a different scale as well as different angles, so that it can capture some directional features from the images, which are pretty much important for biomedical images. So that's what our contribution was at that time. And what we did is, you can see, so let me show you one figure, the feature extraction figure. If you can see out here, yeah, this is what we developed, a feature extraction method. So what we did is, we initially apply a curvature transform on these images over different scales and angles. And then we found that there are some subbands or components or curvature components which are symmetric in nature. Then we have removed those symmetric components, and then we what we did is, we calculated some entropy features, some you can call it as statistical features. So we have only considered here entropy features from each of the subband, and then we form a feature vector for each of the images. So then the similar procedure, as I said, the similar procedure we have followed for different number of images. I mean, for the images in the testing set and the training set, and then we have applied a classifier here to solve the problem. So this is how actually the pattern recognition system looks like, and the accuracy which we achieved is definitely better than the other, better than the other. If you can see here, the accuracy is something on both the data sets. So here we have considered 2 different data sets, and the accuracy is something 96% on MD1. MD1 is a small data set which contains images of 5 different categories. And and we have compared with the state of the arts methods, which are also machine learning based or pattern recognition based models. And here we could able to achieve good results, I mean better performance than others. And this is the paper actually, there's the work actually was done in 2017, and it got actually accepted in 2018. So this is a paper in IEEE transaction, and if you want, you can go through that paper, or else any paper if you want, you can go through and you can learn. So coming back to the, so now what we have discussed is, we have discussed about the limitations as well as the weaknesses of the machine learning or pattern recognition based models. And so let me right now discuss some of the importance of the deep learning. I will see, as I said, I will only give you the brief introduction to deep learning and why people are talking about deep learning right now. Why not this multi-stage architecture, and why people are talking about always end-to-end learning since the last couple of years, and because of some reasons. And what are the advantages? If you can see here, it eliminates the conventional step of the machine learning. It enables end-to-end learning without the needs for feature engineering. So that means here you will not extract the features. Here you can ignore the handcrafted features, whatever you have been extracting from the features by means of any algorithm, feature extraction algorithm. Here the features are learned automatically from the images directly. So that feature learning is happening here automatically. So you don't need to extract the features by using any transform or any other technology, feature extraction technologies. So it actually, why the name is the deep learning, because it is sometimes called as deep neural networks as well, and it has several layers, and that layers, and the basic job is to transform the input data to output while learning increasingly hierarchical features or higher level features. And the most important, and the one more important thing in deep learning is, it can easily be retrained for other recognition tasks. That means, let's say I have designed a deep learning architecture for solving my problem, for solving an image classification problem. So can I use, or can my friend will use the same network for solving a similar type of task? Yes, it can be possible in deep learning, and it is very rather easy to retrain the model just on your data set. So it's very important, and there are several interesting concepts are there in deep learning. So as I already mentioned that I will discuss only in brief. So these are nothing but the advantages advantages of deep learning methods over machine learning methods. So two successful and popular type of deep learning methods are nothing but autoencoder and convolutional neural network. And basically convolutional neural network are pretty famous in the domain of medical imaging. Why? Because we are talking about imaging, and CNN are basically is very successful in image and video centric problems. So that is why we mostly are focusing on today in convolutional neural network. And coming to the definition, I mean, the very interesting thing that how will you differentiate machine learning and deep learning? And when you will use machine learning and when you will use deep learning. So that is also a question that given a problem, how do you know that whether you should go for machine learning or pattern recognition model or sometimes or a deep learning model. So I think yeah, you can see the table on the screen right now. And the table has two different parts, two different columns, machine learning and deep learning. And in the machine learning column, you can see there are some plus symbols, there are some minus symbols. And in deep learning as well as there are some plus symbols and minus symbols, which actually represents the advantages, I mean the strengths as well as the weakness, we can call it as. So the strengths are nothing but machine learning, good results with small data. So machine learning will achieve or will produce good results with small data, but in deep learning, it requires a very large data set to provide a reliable result. So this is what actually, this is the weakness of the deep learning algorithm. But once you will provide a huge number of data set, the result or the accuracy deep learning can provide, nobody other can provide. And so that is why accuracy, you can see the last point, the accuracy is unlimited, but in machine learning, the accuracy may be constant after some point of time. And of course, the machine learning is quick to train a model because if you are applying over small data, and definitely it will take less time to train a model. And if you are requiring large number of samples, so in deep learning, definitely it is computationally intensive. And need to try in machine learning, yes, the major weakness is need to try different combinations of features and classifiers to achieve the best results. And but in deep learning, as I already mentioned, it learns the features and classifiers automatically. So very important. But the thing is, in the domain of medical imaging, it is pretty difficult. It's very difficult to collect the data. I mean, in a larger scale. You all know why it is not that easy. It is not, we are not collecting the natural scene images where you can take a camera and you can take a lot of pictures and you can combine and make them, and you can decide and you can design a data set. It is not that easy to collect the medical data. So there exists no such large scale annotated medical image data set comparable to ImageNet. So ImageNet is a data set because of that data set, lot of CNN architectures came into the picture, and right now they are actually regulating the world. So and there no such type of actual ImageNet when it started. It contained, I think, 2 million images of 1,000 categories, and no such type of data set is available in medical imaging domain. Then the question is, how will you apply deep learning algorithm in this type of situation? Yeah, there are some procedures. If you are having a less number of data, or then there are some procedure to use how to use deep learning models in this type of situation. So then, if you want to solve a problem, and if you are confused that whether you should apply machine learning or deep learning architecture, and that first you initially you have to check whether you are having sufficient amount of GPU or not to run the model if you are going for deep learning models, and if you are having lots of labeled data or not. If you are having both these things, sufficient or high performance, high end system associated with GPU, as well as lots of data, labeled data, then only it will be very easy for you to apply deep learning algorithms. But if your data is small, and I will suggest you to definitely you should go for machine learning technique. And if your data is small and you are getting very good accuracy in machine learning uh, using machine learning methods, then why you will go for deep learning methods? So then again, I also told you one more thing, that if the number of data is very, it is, less, then at that time, how will you use deep learning methods? So there are the various ways to use deep learning methods in case number of images are less. And this is, I should not discuss more in it because I must focus on some other things. And convolutional neural network, as I mentioned, that this is how convolutional neural network looks like, and it contains actually convolutional layers, some layers, convolutional pooling, and then finally fully connected layer, which is like, the fully connected layer, similar to the layer in the neural network we have seen earlier. So this is how this convolutional neural network looks like, and later on, lots of variants of convolutional neural network came into the picture, and by using several residual connections, and by using several other, concepts, bottleneck layers and others, a lot of architectures came into the picture. And if you want to learn more about it, you can learn more about it also. And actually, the concept of people are talking about deep learning since the people are talking more about deep learning, I think, since 2012, when AlexNet came into the picture. And then actually the CNN architecture and the deep learning concepts are not at all new. This is a very old techniques. It was actually initiated in the year 19, early 90s, and these are actually not new concepts. But at that time, Professor Lee Kohn and Bengio, they have started, and they have proposed one architecture called a LeNet, and they are now called as, or known as, the founding fathers of deep learning, along with Professor Hinton. So, so what I want to say here is, yeah, the deep learning concepts are not new. It can be tracked back to 1980s, and this is the architecture which is a breakthrough in deep learning, and which is published in 2012, and AlexNet, which is called as AlexNet. And the Hinton, Professor Hinton, I hope you all know Professor Hinton, who is also the developer of backpropagation algorithm. And Professor Lee Kohn and Professor Benju have developed, actually initiated this work in the year 1998. They published LeNet, which was basically designed to solve a pattern recognition problem. And actually, no, they have applied their data on MNIST dataset. MNIST is a kind of numeral dataset from English numeral dataset from 0 to 9. And they have tested, they have trained their model. But why it was not famous at that time? Because at that time there were no GPUs, and it took a lot of time to train the model. So that at that time they got criticized from other research. So what you have proposed is taking a lot of time. Maybe it will not work. But now they are the fathers of deep learning. So very, very important. And AlexNet has a lot of followers and a lot of applications in varieties of computer vision, medical imaging domain as well. And I'm not going into the details of it right now. And these are some of the popular architecture. If you can see year wise, actually there was a challenge going on everywhere. There is something called as ImageNet challenge going on every year, and AlexNet was the first time winner by any deep learning method. So in 2012, then thereafter, all the methods, whatever, who is the winner, and are nothing but the CNN-based architecture only. So these are the three persons. If you can see here, these are the three persons who take a bow to them. Professor Lee Kohn from left side, from the left side, if you can see Professor Lee Kohn, who recently visited India, IIT Gandhinagar, when I was in Gujarat, and then Professor Geoffrey Hinton and Professor Suavengio, these three, and Hinton, I already told you about him. These three are the renowned professors and called as founding fathers of deep learning. and that is why they got received. I mean, they got awarded as they have been awarded with Turing Award, and you know how important the Turing Award is in the domain of computing. It is a kind of Nobel Prize. And there are various ways of using CNN that I'm not going to discuss in this, because our main focus is to see how we will use the pattern recognition algorithms or machine learning algorithms to solve it, to develop a CAD system. So basically, medical image analysis problem, I mean, in a broader sense, if I divide the medical image analysis problem is of two types. One is a classification and one was segmentation problem. And the classification problem is a very easy one. And you can easily see here the classification in this example. If you can see in the figure, the first figure, simply classification problem means you have to provide a label to this picture. So this is nothing but a cat. So you have to provide. And the segment is that means the input is image, output is a label. But the segmentation problem is a little bit different, where the input is an image, the output is also an image. The segmented image, the output is nothing but a segmented image. And if you look at the last picture out here, which is called a semantic segmentation, and the semantic segmentation is nothing but here the pixel classification problem. You will classify the pixels into either the background or the foreground pixels. So I will also show you one example in the domain of medical imaging and how important it is to and how important the segmentation problem is. So say for example, if you want to locate where the brain tumor is present in the MRI images, so then you have to show in that picture itself that where exactly the brain tumor is present. So you have to highlight that part only, and you have to classify those pixels maybe into white pixels or like a basic and in general, whenever you are solving a segmentation problem, in general in medical imaging domain, if you can see right now the pictures, this I've taken from an IEEE transaction on medical imaging paper. So how the segmentation, the output of a medical image look like. So if you can see, the first one is nothing. The first images are nothing but the CT scan of lungs. And if you look at the results, the corresponding results in the second row are nothing but here it is a pixel classification problem. So the pixel classification means some of the pixels are white and some of the pixels are black. The region of interest, I mean, the region which where the abnormality is present or which we want, which is desired, are represented by white pixels, and all others are represented as a background pixels. So this is what, and the second one is a very, very important task and very important problem in the domain of medical imaging. The second one is nothing but a fundus image of an eye. And the output is nothing but the retinal vessel segmentation. Retinal vessel segmentations. So the vessels, if you can see here, the vessels are there in this fundus image captured from an eye, and the vessels are in the original image, if you can see here, are represented in red colors in different branches, and you have to locate those branches or those vessels in the segmented output, and it has been a long standing problem. Sure. So this is how actually the segmentation output looks like, and this is the output of an architecture called as UNet, and UNet is a kind of CNN model which is originally designed to solve segmentation problem of medical images. And this is what the this is how actually the segmented output looks like. So now let us discuss what are the current challenges and scope in the domain of medical imaging. And if you can see here, so these I have listed out some of the problems which you can pick up and you can start working on this field, because these are very recent field people are working on. And out of these are like detecting tumor. Yeah, it's a very old one, but still it's a long-standing problem, and still people are working on it. And something called as multi-class brain disease diagnosis, which I'm going to discuss today, and something called as glaucoma detection kind of eye diseases using retinal fundus images, which I've recently shown. And at last, I will be discussing how we can help to fight against. I mean, how we help to detect COVID-19 using some chest radiography images. So there are some others I have also listed out here. And coming back to the multi-class brain disease classification using magnetic resonance images. So, so let us have a brief introduction to brain disease and multi-class brain disease. What is brain? What are the brain? What are the different types of brain diseases there? And what is a multi-class and how challenging it is if you will compare it with a two-class classification problem. So in this figure, if you can see, which is there on my screen right now, is right-hand side. You can see in the right-hand side, I have drawn one figure, and in that figure, if you can see here, I have mentioned that there are four different categories of brain diseases, and which is actually divided into. And what are those? One is cerebrovascular disease and neoplastic disease, otherwise called as brain tumor. Cerebrovascular disease are otherwise called as brain stroke, and degenerative disease, inflammatory and infectious disease. And the names which are written in blue color in the right hand side are nothing but the specific disease category or the specific disease name which are falling under these four categories. So it has been broadly divided into these four categories, and these are the right hand side, the names which are written in the blue color and the blue text are nothing but the names. So why exactly, why it is required? Why? What the statistics says? The statistics says that more than 500 new cases are diagnosed with brain tumor every day. So it is very, very essential to design automated system to early detect the disease in order to prevent or in order to preclude the severity of the disease as well as to reduce the mortality rate. So that is why it is very, very important to design some CAT system for this type of diseases which are very commonly found in the people. So very, very important. And for this, why? For this, why MRI images are being considered compared to the other imaging technologies. So why doctors are suggesting or advising us to use or to go for MRI, why not others? So to discuss the importance of MRI images over X-ray imaging and CT scan, which are very similar to that. So I would like to briefly discuss the principle and the advantages or the weaknesses and the strength of each of these technologies. And so X-ray imaging is pretty easy to understand exactly why the X-ray images, the output of the X-ray images looks like black and white shades. So there are some reason behind it. So X-ray imaging, and we all know that creates a picture of the inside of your body, and the images show the parts of your body in different shades of black and white. Why? Because the different tissue of the body observes different amount of X-ray radiations. The calcium in the bone, observes the highest radiation, so that is why it looks white. And so that it becomes easier for the radiologist even sometimes for us to see that where is the bone injuries. And the fat and other tissues observe less radiation, so that is why it looks gray. And air observes the least, that is why and the other parts looks black. So what are the benefits of the X-ray images? You all know that X-ray images are fast, X-ray images are easy to capture, and it is low cost. And it costs around 200 or sometimes 100 to get the report of X-ray image. And yeah, for bone X-rays, it is basically used. Uh, Bone X-rays are the fastest and easiest way for a physician to view and access bone injuries. You all know that. And X-ray equipment is relatively inexpensive and widely available. But CT scan and MRI both are actually expensive than X-ray and not widely available. You will not find even a single CT scan in the rural areas. You have to go to the town and you have to go to the big hospitals to go for CT scanning and MRI scan. So, but there are also some risks in X-ray imaging because it is providing some harmful radiations. So it is generating some harmful radiations. Definitely, it is risky, but there is a slight chance of cancer. It depends upon all the setting of the parameters of the machines, and there is a slight chance of cancer from excessive exposure to the radiations. So that is why women are always suggested whenever they are going for X-ray scanning. So they are always suggested and they should inform to the physicians or radiologists that yeah, if they are pregnant, then they have to inform. Otherwise, there might be a problem. So coming to the CT scan, so CT scan is nothing but a computer processed information of many X-ray measurements from different angles. So that is why it produces some cross-sectional images of a specific area. Basically, if you can see the output of a CT scan of a brain, and it is represented in different 2D slices. So if you combine together, it will become a 3D scan image, and then it is actually these are nothing but the slices which are 2D in nature, and these slices has been captured from the base of the skull to the top. You can see from the top to the bottom, and this is how the CT scan looks like, and the CT scan is slices, and there are also some benefits and some risks in the CT scan. And the benefits are nothing but it provides excellent resolution compared to X-ray. You all know that, and is basically used whenever a person is having, a patient is having a brain fractures and brain hemorrhages. At that time, it is actually suggested or advised that to go for CT scanning. And it is excellent for evaluating the fractures as well. It is more expensive. The risks, if you want to discuss about the risks are nothing but here it is more expensive and much more radiations as well. So coming to the MRI scan, we talked about just now the X-ray imaging, the principle and the benefits, risks, as well as we have discussed about CT scan, the benefits and risks of CT scan. So now coming to the MRI scan, if you see, the MRI scan is the most powerful medical imaging technique used in radiology till date, and that is why the inventors, the developer of these technologies have been awarded Nobel Prize, if I'm not wrong, and form pictures of anatomy and psychological processes of the body. So it is good for healthy as well as disease subjects because it doesn't involve any radiations. And then how it is providing the excellent resolution results? It is the concept of the MRI scans are nothing but the magnetic fields, radio waves, and as well as field gradients. All are physics concepts to generate the detailed images of the organs inside the body. And the most important characteristics of MRI is it provides excellent resolution of brain tissues, not only the brain tissues, uh, the tissues of the body. So only one weaknesses on the limitations you can call is it is much more expensive than X-ray and CT scan, and it takes a lot of time to capture the image and to get back the report. So it always takes a lot of time. And that is why if doctors prescribe or doctors advise to the patients they're serious and it is required, it's really required, then only they suggested to go for MRI scanning. And if you can see here, yeah, it is not running the figure. It is nothing but the model of a brain and how the MRI slices are being captured, but it is, I think, yeah, not showing here, no problem. So then coming back to the different types of MRI scans. So MRIs are of actually different types, T1 weighted, T2 weighted, proton density, varieties of MRI types are there. And basically T2 weighted is the middle one. Here you can see is basically used for pathology, but that doesn't mean that others have no meanings. These can be produced by different settings of the parameters of the MRI machine. And the most important thing is as the data set which we have been used, even other researchers have used, is mostly containing T2 images. And although there are some important characteristics present in T1 and PD, so the recent challenge, I mean the current challenge is to use all the images, all different types of MRI images to extract the information, collect the information together, then provide to a classifier to get a good result. So just coming back to yeah, normal versus pathological. Here I would like to show you something that how different a normal brain MRI is from the abnormal brain. So you can see here I have shown 9 different figures and named from A to I, and in 3 different rows. And in each row there are 3 images, and the first image itself in the subfigure A if you can see, is nothing but MRI image captured from a normal person, healthy person, and rest others are the images captured from the mm, patients, the brain who are suffering from some kind of brain diseases. And here it is this classification problem is nothing but a binary classification problem, because you want to simply classify the problem, I mean the images, into two different categories. One is normal and abnormal, whether the person is having disease or not. So, so the most important characteristics or the feature in this particular image, if you can see figure number A, there is something like a X kind of structure present, I mean, in the middle of this figure, which is nothing but actually the cerebrospinal fluid. The cerebrospinal fluid is very symmetric in nature, the structure where it, um, the portion which contains the cerebrospinal fluid, actually that is very symmetric in shape. And if any kind of disturbance will happen to this structure, so then you can at least guess that there is something in the, there is I mean the person is suffering from some kind of disease. But what kind of disease, that is again a major concern, and that will lead to again multi-class classification task. So once you will find that yes, the person is having disease, then what kind of brain diseases the person is suffering from. And here you can see all other images are having the disturbed the symmetric shape of this particular middle part of this figure, whatever I've shown in figure here. And the images which I've collected and which I have shown here actually are pretty different, or easily distinguishable from the figure number A, and that I've intentionally put like that just to make you understand how different the images of healthy MRI and abnormal MRI is. So intentionally I've taken the most distinguishable pattern from the data set. And there are, and the most difficult thing is, I mean, these images actually have been captured from those patients who are at their later stage of their diseases. But if you capture the images at the early stage of the diseases, maybe that image and the normal images will have the similar manifestations or similar characteristics. So this is actually this problem is basically relatively easier compared to multi-class classification, because it is actually binary classification problem, and the task is to simply classify the image into two different categories, normal and abnormal. And coming to the multi-class categories, uh, multi-class categories. Yeah, here you can see I have shown five different samples from each of these five categories. So I've already talked about there are four different varieties of brain diseases are there, and including normal or healthy samples. So now the problem has become a 5-class classification problem. So now you can see there are some similar manifestations of the normal images with some infectious images. It looks pretty similar to that. But then how would you distinguish that whether this is a normal or this is infectious one? And this problem is known as, there is a large interclass similarity. There is a large interclass similarity present in between, and therefore it is really difficult and challenging as well to distinguish that what type of disease the person is having, because it is having similar manifestations with other diseases as well as the healthy one. So very difficult and challenging as well. And what we did is we initially applied some of the pattern recognition and machine learning technologies or methods of that I have already shown you in my paper. And at that time we have achieved some results. And later on we designed, later on what we did is we designed the different type of deep learning architecture to solve the same problem, and we have achieved significant results using deep learning architectures. So one of the architecture, if you can see here, one of the architecture is nothing but deep stacked RBFL-A based solution we have designed, and the paper got published in 2020. The work is actually done in 2018, and it is a very important technology. So we have developed, if you want, and you can get the code from my GitHub account, and you can use this model for any image classification problem, and basically a medical image classification problem. And this RBFL-A is nothing but this has been designed based on the concept of stacked autoencoder. So instead of using simple neural network for designing the autoencoder, So we have used RBFL, Random Vector Functional Link Network, which is a randomized randomized learning algorithm for single layer peripheral neural network. And in addition to that, we have also added a lot of things here. We have added the concept of ReLU and its variants in this network, and we could able to achieve. And our motivation and our main objective was to reduce the training time what exactly the Stark autoencoder holds. And if you look at the accuracy, look at the comparison with the other methods on different data sets in table 1, table 2, in two different data sets. And if you just look at the accuracy, of course, we are getting good accuracy than other deep learning based models. But if you look at the training time required by our proposed model is the least among all. So this is what our objective was initially, that to reduce the training time, as well as at the same time uh, um, to get or to achieve a good performance. And later on, we have also proposed one CNN-based architecture. Here also, our motivation was to reduce the number of parameters compared to the models which are available in the literature. And I think we're the first one who developed for CNN-based architecture for solving this problem, multi-class classification problem. And this work also was done in 2018, and it got published recently in 2020 in Pattern Recognition Letter, which is one of the good journal. You all know that. And yeah, so if you look at the number of parameters here, it is only 0.23 million compared to others. And we have also achieved significant accuracies compared to other models. We have also compared with some pre-trained CNN models like AlexNet and others, and we have achieved comparable accuracy or comparable performance when we compare with those models using transfer learning technique. So then also we have compared with some of the state-of-the-art methods, and the major limitations in this work and the challenges we have already discussed. That the data set, whatever we have used, actually is very less in size. It contains very less number of samples. So we have to design, or we have to validate the data, the model on a very larger data set to verify the effectiveness of the model. And it is also possible to hybridize the deep features, whatever is extracted from the deep learning models, in the handcrafted features that you already know we are using in the pattern recognition system. So we can combine them together to form a powerful feature vector, and that can also be a research area or research direction. So yeah, and coming to one more problem related to segmentation, as we have already discussed, that there are two different problems which we will focus on in this session. One is classification. As you already know, that classification is given image, set of images. You have to label the images by using your model or whatever you will design. And then coming back to another problem is the diabetic retinopathy. So diabetic retinopathy is an eye disease actually, which is basically caused by the diabetes disease, and it is mostly affected by the working age population in the world, and yeah. So if you discuss about the statistics about on diabetic retinopathy, you can see the statistics here. So according to International Diabetes Federation estimates, presently the global number of individuals affected with diabetes is nothing but 425 million. Can you believe? So diabetes is a common disease, you all know that, and it may rise to 693 million by 2045. So 693 million, can you believe that? So this is what diabetes, the statistics of diabetes and how related diabetes is and to diabetic retinopathy. Now I am going to show you. So 1 out of 3 individuals who are suffering from diabetes is expected to have some form of diabetic retinopathy, and 1 in 10 is prone to vision threatening as well, vision loss. So therefore, always those persons who are suffering from diabetes are suggested or advised to go and check their eyes at a regular interval. Otherwise, they may suffer from diabetic retinopathy problem. And these diabetic retinopathy are and generally diagnosed by the fundus images, which are captured by the fundus camera, uh, and Basically, there are four types of abnormalities you will find in that fundus images, and if any one of them is present, and all are present as well, so you will easily, I mean, you can distinguish or you can diagnose that this person is having some form of DR, diabetic retinopathy. And what are those lesions or abnormalities? Are nothing but microaneurysm, hemorrhages, soft exudates, and hard exudates. So in this particular example, I mean, in this particular figure, if you can see, what is on your screen right now is four different lessons on a particular fundus image. And in this fundus image, and you already, I think I have shown you already what are the vessels present in the fundus images, which are in red in color, and which looks like the branches of a tree, and that is nothing but the vessels. And there is something like a yellow circle present in the image. And the right hand side, if you can see, that is called as optic disc, and that is also very very important. And that if the size of the optic disc will be disturbed, then and some other, it may lead to some other eye disease called as glaucoma. And but here, if but diabetic retinopathy, if you can see here, microaneurysm, hemorrhage, soft exudate, and hard exudate. But the major challenge is, so what we want to do here is the segment where the abnormality is present. Then you have to highlight that part only by the white pixels. So this is a segmentation problem we have already discussed. So the input is image, output should be also image. And I will also show you the output of the, I mean, some of the ground truth images for this. And the challenge is here, if you can see, the pixels present in the microaneurysm as well as hemorrhages or subexudates, the pixels, I mean, the intensity values of these regions are pretty similar to the intensity values of the background pixels. So then how would you distinguish whether this pixel belong to hemorrhage or not? It is difficult. I mean, sometimes difficult for the radiologist or ophthalmologist to distinguish this pixel with that pixels by an open eye. So again, there is a need of some deep feature extraction technology which can deeply extract the features, and some hierarchical features that will be helpful here to distinguish between the the pixels of this abnormality region, or as well as the background region. So here, what actually the problem is? The problem is to I mean to segment these four things independently. So till now, the whatever the problem, I mean, it's a very recent work actually in 2020. There is a paper published on this particular data set as well. And the most important thing here is how would you separate, I mean, how would you segment those persons? So these four problems, I mean, these four lessons are treated as a independent segmentation problem. So here, although I have represented five, the figure F, A, B, C, D, E, F, the figure F is not at all of our interest. So it is not at all required for diabetic retinopathy, and it is for some other purpose. And the figure B, C, D, E are nothing but the ground truth images for microaneurysm, hemorrhages, soft exudate, and hard exudates. So you should design a model in such a way that it should give a result like B, result like C, result like D, result like. And yeah, this is the summary of the challenge happened in the year 2020 for diabetic retinopathy. Nowadays, so many challenges are happening in the world in the domain of computer vision, medical imaging. And what is that challenge? But those who are conducting the challenges, they are always collaborating with top conference in the world. And what they are doing is they are simply releasing some set of training and validation sometimes said to you, and you will build your model based on that, and you will submit your model to them. They will test your model, and they will declare the winners, and accordingly your paper will be published, and you will be declared as the winner in that challenge. So this is what is happening in every, in many of the computer vision and medical imaging domain. So here, if you can see in this particular table, has been divided into four different rows. As I already told you, that four different lessons or the abnormality regions have been treated as a four different independent segmentation problem. So what exactly happened here is, if you can see the result in terms of area under the precision curve for microaneurysm, the result, I mean, the value is 0.5017, and the winner is using cascaded CNN architecture. If you look at the approach column, you just look at the fourth column, all are based on CNN architecture. All the winners, all the even runners-ups teams are using UNet or CNN, UNet. These are all CNN-based architecture, basically used for segmentation purpose. And so what we can conclude from here is, if you look at the AUPR values in all the four cases, it is actually very, very less. Except hard excluded it is 0.8850. So why actually it is 0.850? Why it is giving good results? Because if you can see here, the hard excluded, the pixels, many pixels in this are actually yellow in nature, and it is bit distinguishable from the other pixels. So that is why it is clearly visible sometimes, the hard excludation. That is why the result, if you can see, is actually higher compared to the other one. So I mean, observation here is there are actually a lot of scope to work on in this field, because this is the result which I've taken from a paper in 2020, is published in Medical Image Analysis. It is one of the best journal in this domain of research. So this is how actually unit architecture looks like. If you want to know more about it, then you can learn. And it is basically actually designed, and the shape is U like structure. And if you just one thing you can observe here, the input is 256 cross 256, and the output is also 256 256. But in earlier I have shown you some network where the input is an image, output is nothing but a class label. So here you all know that you are solving a segmentation problem. Input is image and output is an image as well. So coming to the last problem in today's discussion is nothing but COVID-19 screening. So can, as an expert in this particular field, can we help to the society in detecting the COVID-19? Yeah, of course. And I should not discuss more about COVID-19 because everybody is well known about this. And I should not discuss when it was declared as a global pandemic and what are the clinical symptoms. You all know that fever, cough, fatigue, sore throat, and shortness of breath are nothing but the clinical symptoms of this particular diseases of this novel virus. And what is the major problem with this virus is why we could not, I mean, we cannot control the spread of this novel virus, because still there is no vaccine or treatment officially approved. So that is what the problem is. And this is what statistics, I think you all are updated with this. And you all know that the statistics as of 16th August 2020, and this statistics has been taken from the WHO website, because we have been involved in this research since last 2 3 months. And not last 2 3 months, maybe, and maybe just after a few days when the virus actually came into our country. And so from that days we have been working together. I've been working together with some of the IIT professors to contribute some things toward the society, to the government of India. So we have tried, even we have succeeded. I mean, we have you have developed some models for this, but the problem is the how can you validate that model? You cannot go outside and cannot go to the hospital to collect more and more information. As you know, we are going to apply deep learning methods, and we need a lot of data for this. And but a lot of other researchers, maybe some researchers in India, as well as so many researchers from abroad as well, they have been involved in this kind of research since long time. And these are the potential areas where AI can contribute to the fight against COVID-19: early warning, tracking and prediction, diagnosis, prognosis, treatment, and cures, and social control. So AI has not yet been impactful against COVID-19 due to the lack of data. You all know that. And the standard procedure is RT-PCR, and this procedure is manual, burdensome, time consuming as well. So until now also, and it is as well as risky whenever the medical, I mean, staffs, they are collecting the swabs and blood samples from you. It is sometimes risky if you are already having positive, I mean, COVID-19 positive. So then actually a couple of days, a couple of I mean 3 or 4 months before, there was an investigation, and there was a report on it that chest radiography images, chest radiograph images, whether it is X-ray and CT scan. CT scan has been well actually used for detecting pneumonia kind of virus and diseases, and so that is why they thought of applying. They thought of uh, you know um, uh, applying some technologies using CT scan images to detect COVID-19 because it has similar manifestations with COVID pneumonia, and from that day, so many researchers throughout the, I mean, all over the world, they started working on this, that whether they can able to I mean, detect chest radio, I mean, detect COVID-19 by using CT scan or X-ray or not, and the data set till now available is very small. So CT scan and X-ray images are more prominent for these. But as I said, that CT scan is more sensitive and better than X-ray. But still, people are working on X-ray. Why? Because X-ray is widely available and can easily be collected. So that is why X-ray has been collected. And the COVID-19, as I mentioned, has similar manifestations with pneumonia. So then the major challenge is lies here in distinguishing or in classifying COVID-19 patients and the other patients who are suffering from pneumonia. And here I want to show you something. In the three, here I have shown you three different X-ray of chest X-ray images uh, of normal category, of viral pneumonia category, and COVID-19 category. Actually, the major indications, radiological indications, if you can see, is nothing but the ground glass opacity is present in it. In the right hand side figure, if you can see, there are something white patchy kind of things present in the lower lobe of the lungs and chest, and which is there seems less in viral pneumonia case and not in normal case. So again, and sometimes these are very these are the cases where you can easily distinguish COVID-19 normal as well as viral pneumonia, but there will be always a confusion between viral pneumonia and COVID-19 because the radiologists even not that much expert in this particular area, because this is a novel virus. So again, we need the help of some computer vision, I mean the machine learning or deep learning technology to correctly diagnose. At least what we can do is, what we have suggested is, we maybe it may fail in detecting all the time, but the important thing is, at least, because the RT-PCR is taking a lot of time to provide the result. So by the time we can, the patient can go for CT. I mean, this is CT scan, or CT scan always takes more time than X-ray. He can go for can he can go for some X-ray imaging, and it is, you all know that how much time it takes to get the report, and at least we can predict that whether the person should go for quarantine or not. That we can do, and later on again we can use, or you can apply, or those RT-PCR test on it, and to verify whether actually the person is having COVID-19 positive or not. And these are some results which we have achieved, and actually this is the old table I have put out here. And yeah, so at last I would also like to show you something very interesting, and which people have already have been working on in this field, that how do you whether I mean social distancing detector. So you have to fit a camera on a particular angle, and you have to tell that whether the persons are maintaining social distance or not. At the moment the person will not maintain, I mean the social distancing, it will indicate. We can see those who are not maintaining the distances, they have been detected in within red boxes, and you can warn them, and by which the social distance can be maintained. And there is something very interesting is face mask detection. So can you apply some computer vision technique, machine learning technique, and deep learning technique to detect whether the person is wearing mask or not? A single person wearing mask or not is a little bit easier. And when you are fitting a camera in somewhere and you are checking that whether all are wearing mask or not, and who are not wearing masking or not, is a bit difficult task, because you are detecting the mask in the wild. So that is why it is pretty much challenging as well. And you can even suggest your students to work on it, and so that you can fit a camera in front of your institute, and to check whether all the persons who are coming inside to the institute are wearing mask or not. If they will not wear masks, so the machine will give you a warning that no, this person is not allowed inside the campus because he is not wearing the mask. So this is how actually the pattern recognition and the medical imaging technologies, computer vision are helpful towards our society, and we can contribute something to our society. You can also design some, robust algorithm to do all these tasks. So, and then finally, if you want to make a career and if you want to do research in this field, then please go through the papers, recent papers in this particular journals. These are the journals which are actually medical, the best journals in the domain of medical imaging. IEEE Transactional Medical Imaging, IEEE Journal of Biomedical and Health Informatics, Medical Image Analysis, Journal of Medical System Plus One, Computerized Medical Imaging and Graphics. And there are some conferences and which are really, really very good top tier conferences. So don't think that conferences are of less value than journals. And if you go to abroad and there people will ask you that whether you have published the papers in conferences or not. Actually, conferences are a bit difficult than journals, and there are some conferences which are pretty good than many of the journals. So these are the conferences which actually you will find a lot of new problems and a lot of new technologies which are being applied, and the very, very top conferences to publish a paper. It is a very big honor. I mean, here in this type of conferences. And the first one is the MICCAI, which is one of the best conferences in the domain of medical imaging. And the second one is Annual International Conference on IEEE EMBC. So luckily, I was a reviewer for this conference. It is also one of the top tier conferences in this field. And IEEE International Symposium on Biomedical Imaging. So these are all, and maximum of the the challenges what we discussed was collaborated with actually these type of conferences. So this is what the medical imaging and how you will use machine learning, deep learning architecture on medical imaging domain to diagnose the diseases, to assist the doctors to find or to come up with a good solution, reliable solution. So thank you so much for your patience, for listening me for a long time. And Sandeep sir, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am here.
The only thing I could not do is I could not show the actually implementation. I mean the code, whatever we have discussed today. But I hope whenever I will share the code with them, they will easily understand because we have discussed one problem, and we have also discussed the implementation views of. We have also discussed the implementation views of those problems. So I hope you all have gained something and you found something interesting and something fruitful from this session. And thank you so much, all of you, once again. And if you are having any doubt, and you can ask one and two, or later on also you can send me an email. I will definitely reply you back within 48 hours.
Thank you very much, sir.
And obviously, I want your feedback as well, whether this session was good or whatever. Even comments are always welcome.
Sir, feedback is there in the chat window. You can read it out.
Yeah, very informative, sir. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you, for your kind words. And
Dr.
can you,
Salesh,
Director Sale sir he has asked about, can you share the code? Of course, sir, I will share the code. I will share with Professor Sandeep, and Professor Sandeep will share with you.
Thank you, sir.
so thank you so much, sir. I think all the participants have enjoyed the session, and definitely they have learned something. And if they have any query, they can contact sir. And as sir shares me the code and the other study materials, I will share it to you with the through mail. Now,
I think almost all the participants are from Rajasthan or from other state also.
no, sir, it is actually mix.
Oh, mix. Okay.
Yes, like it is all
Then
from
it's
all over
nice.
India.
Nice.
Like Karnataka too, sir. One
Wow.
one
Great,
map is
great,
saying
great. Great then.
Odisha, Telangana, like from like all other states have been
Yeah, yeah.
covered.
I could. Gujarat, Ahmedabad, Selesar. Radha is from Telangana. Chandrasekhar is from Andhra Pradesh. Sesu is from Karnataka. Wow, Sesu is from Karnataka, Bangalore. Thank you so much, all of you. Pondicherry. One is from Pondicherry as well. I visited Pondicherry last year. So I was there. Actually, I was working in Tamil Nadu as well.
Okay. Nice, sir.
Chappala Maharana from Odisha, and I am also from Odisha.
Okay. Nice, sir.
Tripura. So it's a nice experience I had with PIET. I hope all have gained something fruitful from this session. And please try to use this. And if you want to build your career, you can also build your career, and you can suggest your students to build their career in this particular field. Because I think since the last 4 or 5 years, many of my students, they are only going to the companies who are only involved in machine learning research, and their package is something different. They're getting almost 40 something, 40, 30, 50 like package per year, and they are enjoying there. So even after PhD, also many of my friends have joined the companies, and it was my choice to come and join in academics. But so this is a real good experience, and try to publish papers in good journals. Even so, do not publish in here and there. Please try to publish in good journals. One good journal in 1 year is also sufficient. So it will be my suggestion, definitely. So if you are having any kind of doubt as well in future, that because the selection of journal is itself is a research. So selection that in which journal or in which conference you will submit your article. So if you are having any kind of doubt for that, so you can contact me. Sir, I am working in this field, and I have prepared one article related to this, and I want to submit this article. And can I submit article in SCI journal or in a top peer reviewed journals? So this is what actually my supervisor used to say. One thing I would like to share with you, that I used to fear to submit the articles in top tier conferences, because I know the rejection, because in top tier conferences the acceptance rate is only 4%, only 4%. So out of 100 papers, and nobody, and obviously all good people will submit the paper there. But my supervisor used to say that why are you so much scared in submitting the paper in those type of conferences? No sir, I want to always, मैं safe side में रहना चाहता हूँ. मैं ये बोलता था, सर मैं सेफ साइड में रहना चाहता हूँ, मैं चाहूँ कि मेरा पेपर रिजेक्ट हो जाए. But what he was saying is something different. If you will submit your paper, and if you want to really know the status of the quality of your paper, you submit in those journals or those type of conferences. And indirectly, what you are doing is you are hiring those reviewers who are really expert in the world in this particular domain. They will definitely read your paper. They will get a chance. Once you are giving them a chance to read your article. So see how important it is. And the comments, whatever they will give, yes, of course your paper will be rejected. You accept the rejected, and from that paper, if you, and the comments will be very, very helpful to publish 4 or 5 even papers later on. So that's what my suggestion is. So always try to publish some good articles, and good articles, on quality articles.
Thank you
That's
very
what my
much. Thank you
suggestion
so
is.
much, sir, for your
Thank
experience and knowledge sharing. We will
Thank you.
we will appreciate like that you have spent so much of time with us, and you have enlightened us with your knowledge. And I hope that all the participants have gained something. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Praveen Gupta, the coordinator of this SCTP, for like discussion regarding feedback and vote of thanks. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. I am Dr. Praveen Gupta with you. I think you have enjoyed the session, last session particularly. I have also enjoyed the session by Mr. Deepak Ranjan. They have delivered excellent knowledge. And previously in all the sessions, 6 into 3 last 6 days, we have conducted 3 sessions every day. Majority of time, I have found that most of the participants were happy with the sessions. Similarly, I would like to know from your side that how are you feeling about this workshop from some of the participants, because for this image processing session, this was the first in the series, and later on we are also conducting 2 more this type of FDP in the coming months. So that will also help us to improve the quality of our FDP. So if somebody from your side is interested, they can give me your feedback about the workshop and the complete arrangements and knowledge shared by something. You can speak with the mic is on. With your mic unmute करके आप बोल सकते हैं. If somebody interested, unmute करके बोल सकते हैं mic पर. If some of the participants.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Sir, myself Samir Saxena is speaking from Amity University. And sir, I would like to thanks to each and everyone that sir, the whole week was very interesting. And since long I was searching FDP, or you can say workshop, basically for the medical image processing. So actually, I don't want to lose this award. So thanks for providing this wonderful session and inviting all the expertise. So thank you all of you. And sir, I'm having a question from Dr. Deepak sir. If
Deepak sir is now not present. आप उनका
Yeah. I'm there, sir.
अच्छा है. ठीक है, बोलिए, पूछिए सर, पूछिए.
So Deepak sir, first of all, thank you so much. And I have got very informative information from your side. And today I've got the very basic, very new knowledge that 179 classifiers are there. By you have attached one information related to research paper. So sir, my question is, sir, if suppose I want to prepare some data set, so for that I have to work on feature extraction first, then based on feature extraction I will prepare data set.
No. We cannot. We can prepare the data set, but we should take the help of the doctors. So doctors are because we are working in the medical imaging domain, so we cannot we cannot label it. We have, although we know this type of things, but there are certain things which only doctors means radiologist knows all the things, because it is their part, and they have to provide us the data based on our requirements. So we have to tell them our requirements, and then based on that they will provide us the data set. And whenever, and this is a collaboration kind of work. So you can see in many of the medical papers related to medical imaging domain, so you will find one author should be one radiologist, or maybe one doctor which is associated with that. So if whenever you are preparing a data set, if it is a natural image data set, you can prepare by yourself, because you know it, how to label it. Everybody knows it, how to label it, how to label a tiger, how to label a cat, whether the cat is present or not. You also know that. You are an expert for that. God has given that power to you. But God has not given the power to us, because we are not the doctors to label it. That's why I said that we cannot replace the doctors. We have to take the help of the doctors whenever you are designing it. So once you are having the images, and then you can apply any picture extraction technologies or any whatever based on your expertise.
So you mean to say authentication will be also provided? Then we will get that is what I mean. Since we were the topic talking about the authentication, because who will authenticate? Who will authenticate? We will have the level.
You have to mention it. Whenever you will publish the paper, you have to mention it that we have consulted with the 3 experts, or from these hospitals we have collected it. You have to mention it, otherwise the paper will not be published. They will ask you. You have to mention it, all this, and you have to write it in the acknowledgement as well. The hospital name and the radiology centers from where you collected. You have to mention it.
Actually, earlier I was thinking based on intensity or shape or some texture feature, maybe I would be able to prepare the data set, and then I will be able to.
No. Medical images we can't do that. In there are some things like there is an architecture called as Gyan. Gyan is nothing but a deep learning architecture, which is basically right now people are using to design even the bed sheet design. Bed sheet design they are doing using Gyan. So, बहुत सारा scenario has been changed right now. But the only thing in the we cannot prepare our own data set. I mean, medical imaging data set. It should be a real one always.
Because the problem which where I am working, and the very well, the point you have discussed during your session, this is interclass similarity, or you can say fatty or blurred kind of the problem. So
True.
there it is really very tough to find the boundary, or you can say the particular line. So
Right,
I feel
right.
yes, sir. So sir, actually my work is on this area, and really I am thankful to you that you have given many of dimensions in today's lectures. So thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. And thanks to all the respected faculty of the Purnima University for providing this opportunity. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Samir Saxena ji. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the participants for interestingly joining this FDP program, and I will also invite them for the next series, which we will be conducting next month. So please join our next FDP programs, which will be scheduled in the next months. Thank you very much for joining the program. Thank you very much, everybody. Now over to Sandeep Tolisi.
Thank you very much, sir. I would like to thank Deeparanjan sir once again for being with us for a long time. Now I am going to share the feedback and quiz link through chat window, and I have also mailed you the same, and it will be shared you through WhatsApp also. You are all requested to fill the quiz and feedback too. We will share the attendance of this STTP by Monday, 31st of August. On the basis of attendance and this quiz, e-certificates will be provided to you all. We will come back with the next part of this STTP soon. So keep in touch, and all the very best. Thank you very much to all the participants. Thank you, sir.